Welcome to a look at the proposed PTS changes published the 20th of October 2016. I saw these new changes were of the more radical nature, so I thought people might appreciate some examples and comparisons mixed with some first impressions. And it's worth heavily pointing out here that these are not changes that should be expected to make it straight to live. These are kind of R&D style broad stroke changes aimed at looking at how they affect the game. Okay, in the general category, dealing damage to non-players, that is Torbjörn Turret's Symmetric Teleporter, no longer charges ultimate abilities. Secondly, ultimate costs have been increased by 25% for all heroes. That is across the board, all heroes. From playing the few rounds that I did, as like an initial impression, it didn't seem to make as much difference as I was initially expecting. It certainly slowed the game down, it didn't feel quite as spammy. My first impression was, yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Okay, for D.Va had some major changes here. The mech health increased to 200, formerly 100, but the armor retains at 400. So that means that D.Va is looking at 600 health. Secondly, the movement speed while firing has been increased by 25%. I believe originally it was at 25%, so that is now up to 50%. The difference that makes, in my opinion, was huge. She feels much more mobile. She doesn't feel like a turret as soon as you open fire. You can strafe a little bit. If you want to peek a corner or look down an angle, then you can be firing at the same time and not just root yourself to the spot. Soldier 76, on his pulse rifle, the bullet damage has increased from 17 to 20 per round. As you can see here, that makes a sizable difference to how fast you can take down these bots in the training area. They also increased the maximum bullet spread from 2.2 to 2.4. That doesn't sound like a lot, but you already had to burst Soldier's pulse rifle, so now you have to do that even more. I'm not sure how I feel about that actually. Should there be a DPS character that is more reliably putting out DPS at a lower level, or do you want to force people to burst Soldier's rifle? At the moment, because you have to burst them, he feels a bit too close to McCree, in my opinion at least anyway. For Ana, the nano boost no longer increases movement speed. Pretty self-explanatory, it means that those nano boosted roadhogs that are ulting aren't going to be shuffling after you in the way that they used to. For Mei, the Blizzard, the ultimate cost has just been increased by 15%. It did seem to ramp up pretty fast beforehand. For Lucio, amp it up. The healing per second has been decreased by 10%. As someone who plays Lucio a lot, I'm kind of irritated by the fact that he's kind of boring to play, but effective. And now you're taking away his effectiveness. Or at least you're chipping away at it. They have to add something else into Lucio's abilities, or at least his general workload to make it interesting. For Zarya, you've got pretty sizable nerfs actually. The particle barrier, the power gained from barriers is decreased by 20%, and for the projected barrier, that's also decreased by 20%. That's a sizable nerf. I know a lot of people were thinking Blizzard would have looked at the power of Zarya already. I must admit I didn't think that they would go just a straight blanket decrease in the amount of power gained. I thought maybe they'd increase the drop-off speed so that if you were at very high power levels, maybe it dropped off really quite fast. But instead they've gone for this kind of blanket thing. We'll see how this goes. Maybe they'll go in a different direction. And finally we have Torbjörn. He's got some sizable changes as well. Scrap is now automatically generated over time, as you can see. The amount of scrap collected from a fallen enemy has been decreased by 40%, and for his Forge Hammer, the swing speed has been increased by 25%, but the damage speed decreased by 27%. Now, this immediately, at least for the Forge Hammer, made it feel much more wieldy. He did swing that hammer with real lethargy before. So now he swings it 25% faster, it feels a lot more natural, but I believe from what people posted on Reddit, it was roughly as powerful as a Reinhardt hammer, so that's obviously had to be decreased at the same time. The scrap, I don't mind it so much because obviously Torbjörn had to kind of go off to the front lines to find scrap, but at least these changes haven't completely taken away that kind of scavenging side. So that's a quick look at some of the changes that Blizzard put up on the PTS. Some interesting stuff there. I would very much be surprised if all of these changes made it to live. If you did like this video, if you like these kind of shorter looks at what's going on in PTS, then why don't you leave me a comment, leave me a thumb up, something like that. If you really enjoyed it, why not consider hitting that subscribe button as well? It's free, it helps me out. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at LCTR Games. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.